What's wrong with you? Why are you not looking at me again? You're crying. Are you crying?
Because the viewers are seeing the three of us together.
I see that there's tears in your eyes.
There are no tears in my eyes.
What's going on?
There's a slight sense of exasperation.
Sure, there should be. Because you are employing...
What do you think I am?
I think you said it yourself with your interview with Mehdi Hassan. I think you're just biased. You talked about tribes.
Who am I biased against?
You're biased against anything anti-Western. Clearly. You said...
What a ridiculous statement.
Because you said it yourself. You said the reason why you have such and such a view with Russia and
Do you think
Ukraine...
I was biased when I led the media campaign against the Iraq war?
As you guys can already see from this quick 30-second clip, this clip is exciting. In this clip, Mohammed Hijab squares off with not only Alan Dershowitz, but also Piers Morgan on his show, Piers Morgan Uncensored. And it is not just a debate, it's a verbal beatdown, as you guys can already hear. We've got accusations of plagiarism, intense clashes over international law, and Hijab calling out the hypocrisy surrounding the Palestine-Israel conflict. If you thought these debates were just for show, this one is going to change your mind. So without wasting any time, let's get into this clip. We'll give you guys our feedback as always, so let's get into it.
No, I think you were...
Was I biased against brown people then?
You were good then.
Was I?
I
was good then, because you agreed with me.
Sure, because you're on the side of truth. Just like I could say Hezbollah was not on the side of truth in 2013, but they're on the side of truth today. I can say this, and even though they're Muslims just like me, just like I can say that Hamas is wrong for doing such and such a thing, but they're right on such and such a thing. I can say all these things. You should be able to do the same thing.
What have Hamas been right about?
Resisting, because they're occupied territory. If they had just attacked,
they were given billions of dollars in 2005.
Okay.
When they took charge of the...
Have they got a right to defend themselves?
Hang on.
Against military
When
targets?
they took charge of the Palestinian people and had power from 2005, they got billions of dollars. And what they did with that money was spend it on tunnels, which they built around civilians.
Sure, so what?
So that they could then launch a horrendous terror attack.
Okay.
And they knew when Israel came after them...
about the terror attack.
Hang on.
You're
when Israel
flogging a dead horse.
When Israel then came after them after October the 7th, they knew, because they'd embedded themselves on the tunnels around civilians,
you're flogging a
that
dead
a
horse.
lot of Palestinians would get slaughtered in the process.
Piers. This clip is a little bit on the older side, and Piers used to be very, very pro-Israel, as you guys can probably already hear. Recently, he has changed, become a lot more fair, but it really shows within this clip. And he rolls this argument out like it's a get-out-of-jail-free card. But let's break it down. Yes, Hamas operates in densely populated areas because it's Gaza, one of the most crowded places on earth. Where exactly are they supposed to go? The framing here is so disingenuous because it ignores the fact that Israel's response has been anything but proportional. Piers is making it sound like these civilian casualties are some tragic accident, but anyone paying attention knows better. It's like blaming the fox for getting caught in the henhouse when you've been raiding their territory for decades.
My question
that's exactly what's happening.
My question to you, does Palestine have a right to defend itself? Does Hamas have a right to defend itself exclusively against military targets?
Everybody has the right to defend themselves.
So Hamas can do that against military targets?
What they did not do themselves is not self-defense. It was a terror attack.
Hold on.
I'm not saying Al-Qaeda.
That's not my question.
Had the right to do
that's not
September.
We both agreed that the civilian death is something which we both condemn. Yeah? We're talking about areas of agreement. You just said it yourself. I'm saying now, do you agree that Hamas has the right, because they're an occupied territory, Gaza is an occupied territory, according to the UK, by the way, they're an occupied territory because of effective military control. According to the UK...
They ended their occupation in 2005.
No, hold on. You're meant to be intelligent. You're meant to know this fact. According to the UK government, according to the US government, and you can check it up online, and according to the UN, all three organizations, Gaza is an occupied territory because there is no... because they have control over the borders, they have control of the population.
But I've said this many times.
So, sure, you agree with it. You said it recently.
I've said many times. Let me give you the facts. Let me give you the facts, please. Can I give you the facts?
Yes, you can respond.
Let me give you the facts. Yeah. Okay, the facts are, in 2005, I was there in Israel when the Israeli government...
Are you sure you were not in Epstein's house?
...uprooted every single civilian, every single dead person who was buried there.
Getting a massage.
Not a single soldier, not a single policeman was in Gaza. Gaza could have become the most beautiful spot on the Mediterranean, Singapore on the Mediterranean. Then Hamas engaged in a military coup in which they murdered members of the Palestinian Authority, took over Gaza, and start sending rockets into Israel. It was only then that Israel began to control the borders and make sure that tunnels couldn't be built. They failed in that respect, that weapons couldn't be brought in. Gaza was not an occupied territory. It was a free territory. between 2005 and the time that Hamas took over. And so
is
the
it occupied
fault
now or not?
all
Is it
lies
occupied
with
now?
Hamas
According to you, is it
for
occupied now or not?
creating a territory
Is Gaza an
in
occupied
which
territory right now, or is it
Hamas
not?
imprisoned.
He's not answering my question.
It's not an occupied territory.
It's not. Okay. Is it an occupied territory according to the UN, the UK, and the US? Yes or no?
Man, I love these yes or no questions that Hijab always constantly drops, and you can almost see Dershowitz squirming. If in a perfect world we had people answer a question with a yes or no as Hijab is requesting, that's where things would actually be interesting, because Dershowitz has to either acknowledge the international consensus or deny it and look completely out of touch. However, what does he do? And we'll see here, he just dances around the question. Classic. Watching this is like watching someone trying to argue that water isn't wet. The facts are so clear, it's painful to see Alan twist himself into a pretzel trying to dodge them. And let's not forget, this isn't just Hijab's opinion. He's got the UN and the UK and a mountain of evidence backing him up.
It's a factual statement.
Not the U.S. The U.S. doesn't
No,
agree
it
with
does.
that. You're wrong about that. The U.S. doesn't agree with
That's
that.
why you've had to plagiarize books in order to make your case from Joan Peters.
What are you saying again?
And Finkelstein
Say that again.
caught you out. You've had to plagiarize books because clearly your knowledge on this issue
well, now we have another,
for your
now
age
we have another
is
count.
ridiculous. According to the U.S.,
now we have
Gaza,
another count.
the West Bank, and East Jerusalem
wait a minute. We have another
an
count
occupied
in the
territory.
lawsuit against you. You've accused me of plagiarism, even though Harvard University conducted a thorough and complete study, totally vindicated
if you're going to do something,
and blamed it on Finkelstein, who then lost tenure for making a false charge against me of plagiarism.
Now,
but
you
you're repeating that charge.
Joan Peters'
Count
book.
2.
No problem. That's according to Norman
I plagiarized
Finkelstein,
my own
who
book?
debated you on Democracy Now! You plagiarized that book, and he showed you evidence in that debate. That's one thing. The second thing is
Harvard University did a thorough study, found out that Finkelstein had made up charges.
Let him respond. If you're going to make these allegations,
he
Alan can
lost
respond.
his position as a professor, but you've accused me of plagiarism. Count 2 in the civil
I'm ready.
that I will be filing against you.
I know defamation laws in this country.
More than
you know. Yes, I do, because I've had 4 cases.
Don't.
I've had 4 cases. And moreover, and I've been the person taking the other person to court, including your good friend Douglas Murray, which I've got 2 cases against him. But what I'll tell you is that you probably know nothing about defamation law, just like you have no information, no knowledge, no peer-reviewed journal on international law. You're completely dumb on these issues, because if you're saying to me...
55 books. I've written 55 books, many of them prize-winning books.
You're not an authority in international law.
Are
you an authority in international law?
And I have won defamation cases.
Are you a scholarly authority in international law?
On the First Amendment.
All right, we're going around the houses. Alan, let me ask you this. One of the many problems I have with what Israel's been doing in terms of the scale of what it's been doing, but also what has been going on the West Bank with the increased settlements, very aggressive expansion of settlements, I think is completely outrageous.
I agree.
But once you said before...
Can we all agree on that?
Yeah, we can.
Well, Alan's agreed on that.
I am opposed to Israel's policies on the West Bank. I think Israel should continue a military occupation of the West Bank, just like I thought it should have continued a military occupation of Gaza. But I'm opposed and have been opposed to civilian settlements since 1967. And I'd like to see them ended in a process that leads to a 2-state solution.
The repetitive 2-state solution, a noble idea on paper but practically dead on arrival. Israel's continued settlement expansion in the West Bank has made a contiguous Palestinian state nearly impossible. According to a 2023 UN report, the number of Israeli settlers in the West Bank has more than tripled since the Oslo Accords. How can you talk about a 2-state solution while actively carving up the land meant for one of those states? Hijab doesn't even need to say much here because the facts speak for themselves. Dershowitz is parroting a fantasy that Israel's own policies have made unachievable.
By the way, I'm curious whether my fellow guest here supports the right of Israel to exist as the nation state of the Jewish people alongside a Palestinian state. Do you agree that Israel has the right to exist as the nation state of the Jewish people? Yes or no?
I think it's a viable option. In 2002, not just Hamas agreed to this, by the way, in what's called the Arab Initiative. The Arab
they didn't.
Hold on, you've just asked me a question. You've asked me a question. You can check me. You can fact check me. In 2002, there was something called the Arab Convention. And in fact, Iran itself was part of it, even though it's not an Arab country, but it was part of the 2002 Arab Convention. And they both said, so long as Israel does not occupy Gaza, it does not occupy the Golan Heights, and it does not occupy the West Bank, which you've just advocated for, then there can be a two-state solution. Even Hamas, Hezbollah mentioned the same thing.
That's
That
totally
Hezbollah
false.
mentioned this point.
That's totally false.
Hezbollah mentioned this, and Iran agreed with it. And members of the IOC agreed with it. Hold on. Members of the IOC.
Have they recently recognized Israel's right to exist? Has Iran recognized Israel's right to exist? Now. I'm not talking about 10 years ago. I'm talking about now. Does Hezbollah, Hamas, and Iran recognize Israel's right to exist as the nation state of the Jewish people?
Alan, let me ask you the other thing that I find really difficult, and Thomas Friedman wrote a very good column for the New York Times today, which I read just before we started this, basically saying that Israel seems to have no plan for what happens after this. And in fact, the UAE, who've normalized relations with Israel, has already offered to go into Gaza at the end of this war in Gaza and to help build a coalition to rebuild Gaza and get the people back on track.
I agree.
But Netanyahu is refusing to countenance that. He's refusing to countenance the idea of a two-state solution. You know, I've said for a while, I think Netanyahu is becoming a massive problem in this. And it's also hard, as Thomas Friedman said, to avoid the conclusion that Netanyahu is acting in self-interest, because the more he's been attacking Hezbollah, the more popular he's grown. Secondly, he has these corruption charges awaiting him the moment this is all over. There's no incentive, actually, for him right now to try and bring peace anywhere. And he doesn't really sound like a man who wants to bring peace anywhere.
He didn't accept it in 2002.
Let Alan respond to that.
Why should he respond twice?
I'm asking Alan.
I would like to see a resolution of Gaza, much like the resolution of Nazi Germany after the Second World War, a Marshall Plan, an effort to rebuild it, an attempt to occupy. What happened in Germany was occupied by 4 countries: France, Russia, Britain, and the United States. I would like to see a rebuilding of Gaza. I think the people of Gaza are entitled to a Hamas-free government, perhaps even a democratic government. I would like to see that on the West Bank. I am a strong supporter of a two-state solution in which Israel can live in peace. That's all Israel has ever wanted since 1948, when it was attacked in a genocidal war. 1967, 1973. All Israel wants to do is live in peace. And if Israel can live in peace with a Palestinian neighbor that's peaceful, that would be my
What is wrong with that? What is wrong with that as an ambition?
Well, he said all Israel wants to do is live in peace. And I think what Israel wants to do is have pieces of other people's land. And as he's just agreed a second ago, and you didn't even challenge him on it, which I find quite incredulous actually, is that he said, I think that the West Bank should be military occupying Israel should be military occupying the West Bank. He says that.
Absolutely.
Now, occupation.
Of course, as long as there's belligerency, there should be an occupation.
All right, before Hijab freaks out, let me address this point where he says, as long as there's belligerency, there should be an occupation. This is a classic Dershowitz argument, but it's fundamentally flawed. He's essentially justifying indefinite occupation under the guise of maintaining peace. But here's the reality. Occupation breeds resistance, and resistance becomes the excuse to prolong the occupation. It is literally the same vicious cycle we are seeing over and over again. Let's not forget that under the 4th Geneva Convention, occupation is meant to be temporary and only for the purpose of securing peace, not permanent domination. Dershowitz's logic here is like saying, we'll stop the war once you stop fighting back, while refusing to address the root cause of the conflict and the reason there's fighting happening. And Hijab, of course, is right to call this out for the nonsense it is.
Why are you interrupting me? I've let you speak for a very long time. I've let you speak for a very long time. Now you're interrupting me. I didn't give you permission to interrupt me. I didn't give you permission to interrupt me in this manner. What I'm saying to you is, according to international law, there cannot be occupation of one sovereign nation over another. It doesn't seem like you care about international law. What do you mean? Yeah.
Wrong. No, you're just wrong.
Okay, just be quiet for a second.
United States occupied Japan. The United States occupied Germany. Great Britain occupied Germany. You can have a military occupation as long as there is belligerency that continues. Your former friend Epstein,
and be quiet for a second. Pretend I'm Epstein, your former friend, and be quiet and listen to what I have to say. Yeah? Whether the United States of America did it or not is not an indication of the legality of something. Occupation
it's legal.
Occupation is by
military occupation is legal while belligerency continues. Okay. That's the law.
Are you going to be quiet? Are you going to be quiet? I've let you speak for about 3 or 4 minutes uninterrupted. He asked you 2 questions, and I've stayed quiet. Why can't, are you okay? I'm saying that military occupation of one sovereign nation over another is not something that international law accepts because it contravenes the
false. False. You're false.
So give me the evidence to the contrary. Give me the. I'm waiting for it.
It's clear that every country that has had a war has occupied the losing country until belligerency is over. Once belligerency is over, as it was in Germany and Japan, 2 or 3 years after the war, the occupation ended.
So why is it that if that's what, if you're saying
military occupation is permissible as long as there's belligerency? Civilian occupation is not.
If what you're saying is true, why have the organs of the United Nations condemned the occupation of Israel? Why?
This is such a mic drop moment. Hijab isn't just making statements, he's bringing receipts. By pointing out that international bodies have condemned Israel's actions, he's cornering Dershowitz into a position where he has to either dismiss the UN or explain why they are all wrong. And you'll never guess it. What does Alan do? He pivots again. The thing is, when you're debating someone like Hijab, pivoting doesn't work because he's relentless. However, it definitely does get annoying when you can't get someone to address a pure fact, because that's exactly what he said is.
The ICC,
they have condemned the civilian aspects of the occupation. They have condemned the building of settlements, which I also condemn.
What you're saying about a military occupation. You're lying just like you had to when you defended the.
Stop it, Mohammed, for goodness sake.
Why?
It's pathetic.
Why? Why is it pathetic?
Attacking lawyers for defending people is so pathetic.
Being proud of it, yeah.
Of all the ad hominem attacks you could use, it is the least effective.
What do you think of Epstein?
And the most embarrassing.
You're defending him too much today.
I think Epstein was a disgusting human being.
So he's proud of defending him. Do you condemn him for that?
Well, I just don't care. I'm talking about Israel.
Oh, you don't care now, but why is it disgusting?
I'm talking about Israel and the Middle East.
Okay, so let's go back to the point. He was just advocating occupying the West Bank, Israel occupying the West Bank. We got to the point where he was saying that's acceptable. I'm saying that if that's acceptable from an international law perspective, then you would expect the ICC and the ICJ and these organs of the United Nations to agree with him on that assessment. They have not agreed with him on that assessment. No, even the United Kingdom doesn't agree with him on that assessment. The national position on the occupation of Gaza and the West Bank is that it's illegal. It's effective military control. So you don't know what you are talking about. And if that was possible, if it's okay for one nation, a sovereign nation, to go ahead and occupy another one, then sorry to say, Russia and Ukraine. Russia and Ukraine, the same thing, the same argument can be made.
What you're saying, your position is that when a country is attacked and it wins the war, it must leave the next day. No country has ever done that. You continue the military occupation until all belligerency ends.
Here's Dershowitz trying to justify indefinite occupation by invoking the idea that no country leaves immediately after a war. Sure, historically, occupations often linger, but that doesn't make them right or legal under modern international law. The United States occupied Japan after World War II, but that occupation ended relatively quickly and came with efforts to rebuild, not exploit. In contrast, the occupation of Gaza and the West Bank has dragged on for decades with no clear exit strategy and plenty of exploitation along the way. This isn't about ending belligerency. It's about entrenching power. Dershowitz's argument conveniently ignores the very different context of colonial-style occupations that's actually happening within Palestine.
Many of the conventions that were put in place were put in place after World War II.
Ends in the Gaza Strip,
you asked me a question.
The occupation should end. Okay. There should not be civilian settlements.
So it's a fallacy.
But there should be a military attempt to control belligerency. That's the law.
You asked me your position, and then you've
Well, he tried to answer you, but once again, you shouted over him. So people can't hear the answer.
Wait a minute, do you agree with him?
What about whether I agree with him or not?
Do you agree with him?
Let the man
Why are you
answer
running
your
away
question.
From this? Do you agree with the legitimacy of occupation?
You shout over the answer.
Is it okay for one country to occupy another sovereign nation? Is it okay or not?
Do you know what is okay? I've had
yes or no?
I'm done.
Oh, you give up?
Yeah, I'm exhausted. I need a break. I need a cup of tea. Alan, thank you for your patience. I asked you to have a civilised debate. You tried, despite extreme provocation,
of course,
on a very personal and ill-informed way, you have managed to be civilised. Mohammed,
I'm
wish
sure
I
you're
could
going to
say
say
the
that.
same.
He's your friend. He's a good friend.
I appreciate
I like
that.
Alan. I respect Alan.
I'm sure you do.
And you, Mohammed, let yourself down today. That's
I
okay.
think you let yourself down.
I'm sure the people that follow you on
He's a monster.
cheering you on.
He's a monster.
No, he's not.
He's not. Okay.
No, he's not.
Okay, he defended a monster. You agree
The
with
only
that?
person who's behaved
Did he offend the monster?
only person who's behaved in a monstrous way in this debate.
Okay, whatever. That's
is
your
you.
opinion. That's your
Is
opinion.
you.
You've given up this debate.
No, I've actually
You've
run
thrown
out of
in-
time. We're
I
running
defended
2.5
the
minutes over
both given
Constitution,
up.
and I will
As you
continue
know,
to
you were
do
booked
so.
till 5 o'clock. It is 5:03.
I didn't even know
We've
that.
actually run out of time.
Fantastic.
But
It's
we've
done.
also booked to debate something that you've rarely spent much time on debating because you were far too busy scoring personal, cheap little jibes, ill-informed jibes.
Whatever. You do. It's good. What's good for the goose is not good for the gander.
And I always think
what's good for the goose is you can't handle it. You can dish it out, but you can't take it.
Oh, I can.
You got a weak chin.
I can take anything, son.
You got a heavy
But let me
punch,
tell
but
you,
weak jaw.
I always think when people get
Glass
personal
jaw.
and abusive like
You
you
and
have,
him.
it's because they can't
You're
argue
weak.
the argument.
You're both weak.
Because they can't argue the argument.
Whatever.
People who can't win an argument, the normal
Okay.
way of debating,
You've just
they
run away
resort
from
to
this
ad
debate.
hominem attacks and
Okay,
personal
sure.
abuse. That's what you've done.
I think
from
you've
the
given
moment
up
this
on this
started.
debate. I think you've
And you
given
let
up
yourself
on this
down,
thing.
Mohammed.
I think you have both given
You
up
let
because
yourself
you
down.
realised that what you were spewing was false, and
Yeah.
you were talking about the pager attack, and you said about it that was an act of military brilliance. I'm sure if it happened here in Sainsbury's and a little white boy was killed, you wouldn't say that, would you?
You know what? Like
You've
I said,
also
Yeah,
let
yeah,
down
run
the
away from that question
Palestinian
too.
people. You've
We're
also
done.
let down the Palestinian people.
he has let down the Palestinian
sure,
people.
whatever.
I agree.
I think you
agree.
both let yourself down. I think you both given up.
Okay.
And I think the standing 10 count has been done, and I think the white towel has been thrown in.
Yeah.
And I think the people can judge what I've done today.
Okay. You know what? On that, I think we can all agree. People can watch your
agree.
performance
I
in the
agree.
last hour
Let
and
the
they can
people
judge
judge.
accordingly. And let me tell you, Mohammed, they will. But thank you for being here. I appreciate you coming in. Alan, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
This is such a one-sided debate. It's honestly appalling. However, I think Hijab did an awesome job of making his points very clear and trying to stand his ground. Within this debate, Dershowitz was relying on outdated justifications that crumble under scrutiny, while Hijab brings facts and international consensus to the table. The question isn't about legality, it's about morality, justice, and the long-term consequences of occupation. And judging by Dershowitz's constant pivots, it's clear he knows he's on shaky ground. As always, I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts down in the comments below if you agree or disagree or just your overall thoughts. Be sure to give us a like and subscribe, and we'll see you guys in the next one.